Hi, I'm Jessie.
And I'm Natasha.
And together, we host Not Creative, the podcast that flips the script on creativity, bringing together the ones with the ideas and the ones who make it all happen behind the scenes.
In each episode, we dive into the minds of creatives, problem solvers, and the people who prove you don't have to wear the creative label to shape brilliant ideas.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to Not Creative, the podcast that explores the outskirts of creativity, where ideas take shape and the people behind the scenes making it all happen. And we have a very special guest with us today.
We really do. This is a new friend for me, so I'm really pleased to be introducing Kerry. Kerry is an agency founder and currently Chief Strategy Officer of Publitech. She has experience as board director across organizations supporting social entrepreneurs and nonprofits. And we're very pleased to have you, Kerry.
Oh, it's lovely to be with you both.
One of the things that really drew me to wanting to talk to you and for conniving a situation where you formally have to talk to me about things was because I was really struck by a lot of the conversations where you've got a very good, firm point of view. You're very good at articulating things. I should say, Kerry and I know each other both from working for the same agency network. And one of the things that was really interesting is a lot of times in those situations, you have a lot of people with, big, important job titles, and we're all there to impress each other and say big, important things. But you always came across as really articulate and really capable of making a point without making it feel like others, were stupid, or like you always listened really well and everything else. And I thought, ooh, you've navigated some tricky conversations. You've had to make some difficult points in the past. So, really, really pleased to have you here. It made me wonder, do you see yourself as a creative? Do you see yourself as a not creative? Like, you obviously have navigated a lot of these kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a great question. I see myself as both. And I don't know if I mentioned to you, Jessie, but my very first job out of college was as an advertising copywriter in a tech B2B agency. So I started life as a creative and worked on the creative team for about just under 2 years, I think, before I was asked to step into an account role and learned that side of the business, and then strangely jumped to a different agency, also tech B2B, but threw me into a comms role. And then starting and running an agency, I've kind of touched all the parts, if you will. I think there's a lot of ways to define creative, and I think our current finance director is incredibly creative in the world of finance, So I suppose it depends on how we're defining creative.
That's different than creative accounting, right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank God. Yes. That would not be a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love the variety and kind of like, I think, just how diverse your career has been, Kerry. And I think, you touched on a really good point of how do we define creative or creativity. So like how would you define it? Like, what is creativity to you? I know it's a really loaded question, but
Yeah, I think creativity is about solving difficult problems in a little bit of an unexpected way. So I tend to view the world through the lens of problem solving anyway, or puzzles that need to be solved. And I think that's usually the remit for the creative team as well, is here is a thing that you need to solve and figure out how to do, but you need to do it in a fresh, new way, or something that feels new. And I think that if you use that sort of loose approach to creative, then you can see that it can apply to lots of roles, not just the actual creative team. Although I would be lying if I said I didn't see a difference between classic creative people and classic non-creative people, because I do think there are differences.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What are I want to know what the differences are.
yes, I'm like, tell me now.
Well, let's see. So I think creatives understand that their role is to solve problems and do it in a fresh way. And I don't know that let's stick with just the account side, the client management, client services side. They know they need to solve their clients' problems, but it is more focused on the need of the client. And there is a level of speed that's often required of the client facing folks that, you need to solve problems quickly and sometimes on the fly in a conversation with the client. And I feel like the creative team oftentimes has a little more time and they aren't necessarily um, asked to kind of problem solve in the moment in front of clients. Sometimes they do, of course, but a lot of times they get to kind of go away to that magical place they live and brainstorm with each other and bounce ideas around, and then do the hard work.
I heard they have it easier that's what I heard, that creatives have it easier.
It's not
No,
at
no,
all
no, no, no,
easier.
I'm not going to misquote you. It's fine.
It's not easier, just different. And I think they understand that they're, I mean, it's in the name, right? They understand that their remit is to come up with something new and fresh. And I think it's not necessarily a good thing that is not the first thought that the client side goes to. I think the other thing is, and I don't know if I should jump into this soon in our conversation, but I think there are different rules that apply to creatives than non-creatives in
Mhm.
agency life anyway, which is my whole adult life is agency. So that's what I can speak to. But there is this sense that um, they're a little bit immune to the rules that the rest of the firms have to live with, and they kind of have special dispensation to ignore the kind of boring bits and just stay focused in their fun, creative world. And I think it is a way that non-creatives, um, I was thinking of using the word infantilize, but that's probably harsh. But they,
I don't hate it.
definitely, sort of, there is this double-edged sword. There is this, oh, we're going to excuse you from the stuff that you find tedious and that bogs you down because we need you focused on generating fantastic new ideas. That's the positive side. But the other side is we don't think you're capable of doing the hard stuff while you do the hard creative stuff. And so I think it's this, I've never worked in an agency, and I don't know of an agency where it's not true that creatives sort of have hall passes from doing um, certain types of activities in the firm.
Let me just say for people who might be hearing this and not actually watching the video that all the heads have been nodding through the whole time that Kerry has been speaking.
Yeah, that rings true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, and I've been guilty of that myself, by the way, creating special rules for creative teams that don't apply to the rest. So I hold myself fully responsible for that dynamic.
It's such a difficult situation, isn't it? Because I feel like when we are in this position, we see ourselves as like we are at the mercy in a way of the creative team when they are producing what we need to deliver, right? So we want to do whatever is best for the client, and that requires creating the best environment possible for the creative team to do their thing. And that might be sometimes, to your point, some people might not like this word, but like it requires babysitting. It requires, excusing them for certain things and being okay that maybe they haven't done their timesheets in a month. But the reality is that
Or six.
uh, yeah, it does come back to bite us at the end of the day. But yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you completely.
I'm interested about your early kind of choice to take a divergent path. What compelled you to pursue the creative arm in the first place? And then I'd love to have the follow-up.
Mm,
What drew you away?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, w- well, it was interesting. I was interviewing for an internship as I was getting ready to graduate college, and I was interviewing in the local mayor's office for a communications role. And I had my little student portfolio, and the lieutenant mayor was reviewing everything, and he was sitting there reading. And then he looked up and he said, "Oh, so you're a writer?" And I was like, "I'm a writer." Yes, I'm a writer. I didn't know, which sounds so silly, but I didn't know until that moment, until he named that. And then I kind of was quickly mentally going through, how it was that almost every term paper I did, I wrote in one draft, start to finish, and turned it in as a complete project. That, you know, I enjoyed writing poetry on the side and fiction, but I didn't think of myself as a writer until that moment.
That's wonderful.
So that led me in the path of seeking a copywriting role. And I think when I look back at why I made the shift, part of it was because I was asked to. It was needed. They needed someone to do that. But a bigger part of it was probably because I love doing things I don't know how to do. It's super fun. Um, Really interesting to just figure it out and try to fly the plane as you're building the plane. And yeah, so it was a new challenge, and I thought, yeah, I'll try this, and then I'll try PR and comms, and then, oh, you know what? I think I'll try building an agency. Lots of stuff I had no idea how to do.
So often we get trapped in the thing we did once, and then it's like, well, I ended up here and I might as well stay with it. It's safe, it's comfortable, I know where it is. So,
Curiosity is a huge component of creativity,
yeah.
and y- because you have to go in unfamiliar places if you're going to come up with something fresh and unique, right? So you have to be willing to jump out into the unknown and try a bunch of things until the magic happens and it works.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue to a question that we like to ask everyone. Would you see creativity as a calling, a gift, a curse? I
Hmm.
think like especially as someone who has lived and like worked as a creative, but also like work with creatives.
I would say the only time it's a curse is if you can't figure out how to make a living at it, but presumably if you're employed and sustaining yourself doing that thing, then I think it's both a gift and a bit of a blessing. Yeah. I think it kind of is related to the question of is everybody creative? And this is probably going to be a terrible thing to say, but I don't think everybody is creative. Um, I think you can cultivate a mindset of curiosity and risk taking and um, some of the other components that are required to be creative, but I don't think it comes naturally to everybody. And I don't think you can take someone who doesn't have an innate skill for design or writing and imbue someone with that through training. I think they can get better, but if it's not present, it's unlikely that you're going to be really, really good at it.
Yeah. I actually think I agree that not everybody is creative. I think that it's probably like a little bit of a switch that has to be flicked on internally, and then you can make it a brighter light or a dimmer light, but there's still there has to be a switch that's turned on inside.
The best creatives do have to have a bit of a risk-taking mindset because they have to be willing to try things that are not going to work. Not every idea is a good idea. Not every concept is going to bear fruit. And um, they might be risk averse in many other aspects of their life or even their job, but in that aspect, they have to be risk takers. And not all of us are wired that way.
Yeah. You also hit on something really interesting, which is employment. Being employed to practice creative is different than someone who is employed to not practice creative, who
Huh.
may be a creative person, but is not employed in the pursuit of their creativity.
Yeah.
And one of the classic, I think, us versus them agency divide is doing art for the sake of a patron or a client versus doing art for the sake of art, and the friction that can sometimes come where it's like your craft may be compromised by the brief. Your craft may be compromised by
Yeah.
a different taste threshold of
Yeah,
your client.
totally. I have had that conversation with more than one creatives over the years of, our words and pictures have to work for a living. That's the way it is. So I, this last weekend, had the absolute pleasure of going to attend a play that one of my coworkers was in, who is an account person, right? A comms account person as her day job. But it turns out she's this wildly creative, incredibly talented performer. Um, and I love that she's found an outlet for that, that it's a different kind of creativity, but it's absolutely creativity that she doesn't necessarily get to bring to her day job in every day, but it's there.
But it's fascinating, isn't it? Like I completely see where you're coming from in the sense of like some people are just born with something, which is the same for so many different skills in life. The same for sports. Like not everyone is good in sports. Not everyone's born for sports. But at the same time, the correlation between creativity and your job in your career isn't always as linear, right? Because you have so many different outlets for creativity. And, like I think this is a wonderful example of someone who might be in a not creative job role, but, like the person might be incredibly creative and have like different ways of living that and expressing that. They're just not how they make a living.
Sometimes we silo our creatives and our quote unquote non-creatives too much. And there is this throw the brief over the wall. The creatives will throw some cool concepts back. And the best teams that I've worked on have been ones where that wall is really permeable, maybe more of a window than an actual wall, and where I've had creative directors who open brainstorms to anybody in the agency who wants to participate, because they genuinely believe that good ideas can come from anywhere. And then the professionals will take those ideas and do the magic, but come on in, all ideas welcome. I think can produce some really interesting things. And of course, it also builds that sense of camaraderie and collaboration that I think makes it more effective when we are handing assignments back and forth across. Like we have each other's back. We know each other in a different way when we're in the room working on things together than when it's transactional otherwise.
Yeah, I think that personal investment on both sides, it can sometimes feel like a not creative doesn't have skin in the game in the same way that a creative does. And one of the principles that I've always tried to infuse in any team I'm working with is it's all of our jobs to know this client, to know this material. We can't just be copying and pasting things into a brief
Right.
and then expect, the best results. Like we have to be as invested as the other half of this group. So, yeah, definitely. That definitely resonates very deeply with me. Yeah.
And then the other thing that the non-creatives, I hate using that term, but
I know we do
the
this. We all know. We all know
yeah,
we're not offending. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think the other important role for the non-creatives is to be the voice of the client in the room, to be during that initial review of concepts internally, to be the ones to sort of, oh, wait, nope, this is not actually how they talk about their products, or the audience for this is not that one. The check for, does this align with what the client is expecting? Not in the way of the client is conservative, don't give them any wacky ideas. More just like, is this correct in terms of what our brief is?
This is an interesting perspective for me personally now, because I came from working with a really big team and different departments. But now with my own studio, it's me and my business partner who is a creative, and we do client meetings together, and we address briefs together, and we build briefs together. And I always find that like just having those interactions and the collaboration, it makes the work richer. I personally believe that, like, and it does make you wonder, right? Like when agencies do get bigger, are we actually building those different levels and layers in a way that it's helping everyone because it gives focus to the different teams? Or is it maybe getting on the way because what if the creatives would be closer to the client? And what could we achieve together?
There's a thing that sometimes happens where account people closest to the clients responsible for those relationships can sometimes forget that they work for the agency and think that they work for the client. And I think creatives can sometimes forget that they work for the agency because they think they work for themselves.
I love that very hard. I have been that account person, by the way.
Yeah.
I've gone, nope, my boss doesn't like, I mean, my client's not going to like that.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Well, because they do have they do serve two masters in some ways, right? Gotta
Well,
meet the client's needs and solve their problems. But at the end of the day, you work for the agency.
It's hard. It's so hard. I think like shifting in our minds, right? Because if you think about it, well, we are the client representatives in the agency, so we always think about like what is the best thing to do for the client. But having that separation, like we are double agent, because when we are, like I remember, Jess, like so many times we had situations where our creative team would want to push an idea out that they really believed in. And sometimes we, from an account perspective, would think, well, this is just not right for the client. And we would be in a situation where internally we had to fight for the client, but then as soon as we were all facing the client, we had to fight for the agency. Like we have to
Yeah.
fight and sell the idea, because you have to flip in your mind, and it's really hard. It's not an easy job. I think like there is sometimes this idea that like, oh, it's it's easy. It's like anyone can just go and be an account manager, and it's really tough. I don't think it's an easy job.
There was a nugget in there that you mentioned that made me think about the first creative director I hired when my agency was tiny and just getting started. And it was never big, by the way, but really tiny in the early days. And he and I, because there would be instances where the creative team would bring concepts that they were in love with that were like, no, this does not meet the brief. This is not. And so he and I came up with a mantra together: no creative in search of a purpose. Right? You don't get to do things just because they're cool. They actually have to be solving a problem or addressing the brief in some way. And we worked together for 11 years. He was amazing and a great partner in advancing the business because he was willing to think that way, in addition to being a terrific creative.
oh, that
Love that.
sounds like a great partnership. Someone who
Yeah.
really does see the other half of that.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to do a really clumsy segue, one of my worst.
Do it.
Say, speaking of seeing things a different way, there was this TV show. It's not on TV anymore in the UK, and I fell in love with it, where they would get celebrities on and then they banish things to Room 101.
Oh.
And so I've become obsessed with this. And when it comes to creativity, when it comes to creative, when it comes to your job, what would you banish?
Wow. I think that it does connect back to what we were talking about in terms of no creative in search of a purpose. I would banish seems harsh, but I think those concepts, those ideas, those solutions that are just because they're cool and we want to do them, um, don't have a place in a commercial business. They certainly have a place in the brainstorming process, right? To start bigger ideas and new ways of thinking going, but becoming attached to those and trying to push them through as actual work for the client just because they're they're fun and cool, I don't think that's useful to anybody. So I would probably put that in the room.
A good worthy banishment. I would say that's an uncontroversial banishment, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
shove that down there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like I want to banish it, like, in my real life.
Yeah, and it's not like creatives are the only people who come up with
Of
creative
course.
ideas and search for purpose, but they do it way more often.
No, for sure. For sure. We also literally say, I'm paying you to think, so you're going to get ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has been over the years one of my favorites as a subtle, not so subtle slap to clients not when they're trying to do something that's a dumb idea, is to say, look, you pay me for my strategic counsel. I'm obligated to give it to you because you pay me for that. You're not obligated to take it. And they sometimes, more often than not, has them going, oh, I'm missing something here.
So I'm gonna try a better segue than Jess's now.
Hey, do
Okay.
it. Yeah. My segue's terrible.
Diving a bit deeper on that, and I wouldn't imagine that this will be a difficult thing for you to think of, but of all the things that we've discussed about, like the not creatives and the people around the creative roles, what stands out to you? Like, what is what is the thing that the not creatives do that you find that is like really, really valuable, like especially in the context of creativity?
Mm. So I think the best way to support the process of creativity from outside creative department people is to really know your shit, to really know the client's shit, to be able to bring that deep subject matter expertise to your creative partners and help make sure that their ideas are on track and kind of empower them with information they're not going to get access to except through you. So I think taking that role seriously, that you really are a partner in the process, and you need to bring your top game to the process and really know the client's business, the client's needs, perhaps a little bit about the client's preferences as well, so that it helps hone the target for the creatives.
I love that. Know your shit is just going to go on the top of every onboarding document I give to anybody
Yes.
now. It's so true.
Same.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah, I listened to a podcast once with Michelle Obama, and one of her millions of things that she says that I'm a fan. So, I hope
Yeah,
that's not a
me too.
controversial
No.
opinion. I'm a fan. But she said there's no substitute for the work. You've got to do the work. There's no shortcut for just like, I'm going to rock up and just be great at this job. Like, you have to do the work. You have to invest in your clients. You have to invest in knowing the thing before you can be an authority on the thing. You can't be
Yeah,
respected
That's so true.
until you've earned it.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So one other thought that I had, which, uh, can we talk about clients and creativity?
Mm.
Because I'm sure you have both been in this situation, as I have sadly many, many times in my working life, where you're bringing concepts to clients and they're like, well, my wife took a design class and she says we shouldn't do da 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 da, da," or, oh, my husband, whatever. Anyway, you get the idea. They're bringing in assessment and evaluation based on no legitimate perspective.
Oh,
And
I designed this in PowerPoint. Can you
yeah,
do it like this one that I designed in PowerPoint?
yeah,
I had that last
exactly.
week. I had
Yeah.
that last week.
It's so difficult, and that is a case where we all want to protect our creative team from having to be on the front line of hearing that kind of feedback, because it would make their head explode. But it is so difficult to be both respectful and helpful to the process in that moment when clients have take that perspective. And it feels like it's way more often about creative than about other aspects of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's so subjective, right? Like there is so much subjectivity that it makes it really hard. I remember, Jess, this was like a million years ago when we used to work together. We had a client that was absolutely horrendous at giving feedback because it was just based on opinion and it didn't give us anything to go about. So it was just like, a simple like, I don't like it, or even rude, like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation once and having to teach the client to give feedback. And I was like, look, imagine that you buy a chair. You don't like the chair. But what is it that you don't like? Don't you like the color? Don't you like the material? Is it not comfortable? Like, what is it? I was like, if you don't tell me what don't you like about the chair, I cannot change the chair for you. It's like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
you need to tell me what is it that you don't like. Otherwise, there's
Totally.
nothing I can do for you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. It is subjective to a degree, but I wonder if we make it more subjective than it should be, creative, that actually there are some fundamentals that apply that perhaps not people who haven't either worked in creative or worked with creatives are less aware of. But there are some design principles, some creative principles, some basic laws of physics that, need to be factored in. And then there's also like, does it meet the brief? Show me how it meets the brief. Okay, now we're ready to talk to the client. But I think it must be frustrating in some ways um, to have your work evaluated by people who in many cases aren't necessarily qualified to evaluate it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there are some instances where sometimes it's just a power thing of I've been put in charge of this, so I'm going to give you opinions. And other times it's a matter of taste.
So that's the thing with like the whole idea of subjectivity also, right? Because like, yes, it goes back to the brief, and ultimately it goes back to the audience and what are we trying to achieve. And we are going to have opinions on it, regardless if you are the right target audience or not, regardless if that should appeal to us, we will have an opinion on it.
I go back to two thoughts. One, our words and pictures work for a living. So if that is what is required to, meet the audience and be resonant with them, then we probably have to think about doing it. Although I would hope and pray there'd be a way to mitigate it actually being work that we wouldn't be proud of. Like,
Yeah.
could we still deliver and feel good about it? Because I think that's another litmus test is it work we're proud of? And
So true.
that was kind of the second piece. Was only one time in my whole career so far have I actually said to a client, if you move forward with this, you need to take our name off it.
Oh, wow.
That is I've been doing this a long time, so I think only having to do that once is probably a good, that says that it's been a pretty decent collaborative experience so far, but it worked. The client backed off. Maybe if I was threatening that all the time, they'd stop hearing me, but
Kudos to you, like to stick into your guns and sticking to what you believe is right. It's that fine line, isn't it? Like, we all have to pay bills, but at the same time, we have to keep our integrity. Kerry, I feel like we could talk to you forever and ever.
this was so fun, ladies. I really enjoyed this.
I'm conscious we didn't ask you, who is your favorite not creative and why?
Oh, my favorite not creative. Hmm. Yeah, this is one of those questions where I feel like I should come up with some famous person that everybody would know about. And
Oh,
um,
we've had people cite former clients. We've had people cite just like a job function. Some people
People
have
say it,
said,
yeah, like a colleague, someone they admire. It can be, yeah, it's very open-ended question.
some
okay,
people cite
well,
their like partners, and I was like, it's never occurred to me that my partner could be my favorite not creative. Like,
Yeah, that was a good one.
um, all right, well then I'm going to pick a fictional character. I mentioned that I had been at a play that one of my colleagues was in over the weekend, and this play was called Silent Sky, and it's about woman back in the pre-suffragette days, before women had the vote in the US, who they called her a computer because she computed at the Harvard Astronomy Observatory. And she took a role that was far beneath her capabilities and was kind of kept in a box and she wasn't allowed to use the telescope. She was only allowed to do all the calculations and feed them to the men who could go use the telescope to validate her findings or whatnot. What was super inspiring is this was a non-creative who sort of refused to be limited by her circumstances and ended up discovering literally thousands of new types of planets and changed the way that that whole team thought, because she was just relentless in her pursuit of that thing that was driving her. And yeah, I found that incredibly inspiring, especially in that time. I sadly don't think it's gotten a ton easier for women, but it's easier than then. And she really changed the game around her, by just sort of insisting,
I love that.
being relentless.
It's very inspiring.
Excellent. What a great answer.
It was really fun, ladies.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Not Creative.
If you like this episode, follow us for more and spread the word.
You can find us on all the streaming platforms, Instagram, and YouTube at Not Creative Podcast.
Catch you next time.
I mean, that was pretty freaking good, man.